Alrighty, folks, we are here today because as of this morning, the channel has eclipsed 100 subscribers. So we are doing the 100 subscriber special today. Got an interesting one in store for you, not something that I have done before, or I don't know if any content creator has really done this before, but we are looking at a tier list of all the items currently in Predecessor. So before we get started, just wanted to say thank you guys for supporting the channel. We've had a lot of fun content going up between the ranked games, between the build testing games in standard, and the spreadsheets where we crunch the numbers on those specific categories like magic power and crunch builds and terra builds. And we've got more of all of that to come, as well as more channel upgrades to come with a better microphone and face camera footage coming, and potentially live streaming on YouTube and even Twitch is on the cards here soon. But just thank you guys for checking out the channel, enjoying the content, and subscribing. We are at 100 subscribers now, so it's been exciting, it's been fun. Glad we could produce some good Predecessor content for you guys to enjoy. So without further ado, we're going to hop into this 100 subscriber special, which is going to be ordering in a tier list all of the current items in Predecessor. Now, I was able to find this tier list pre-made that had a lot of items in it. It didn't have all of them in it. It had all of them from February of last year in it, so quite a lot has been added since then, obviously. So we can see here all of the items that were already in the game. We've got all the crest, the starter crest up first, followed by all of the items that the starter crest evolve into up next, and then we've got all of the actual tier 3 items that you can build in the game. You see I've had to add all of these, which is why their graphics look a little different. The graphics on these are from Omega City's website, so I didn't zoom them in and organize them and put the words right over the middle. But you'll be able to figure out what they are, and I'll be able to figure out what they are. And then we also have the tonics here. And then last, which we're not going to be putting on the tier list, is all the middle tier evolutions to the crest, as well as the items that got removed. So you got these couple items here that were removed since this tier list was created. Predecessor has been on a great path, and I'm very happy with the progression that Omega Studios has made with it. It's truly a special game in my opinion, and the closest game that I've played that's felt to the original Paragon. So I'm happy to have an actual third-person MOBA that we can play and enjoy here. And looking forward definitely to the August 20th is the set date, the first night of Gamescom, full release patch 1.0. Very exciting to see them kicking off their marketing campaign for this game now that it's going to full release. It's going to be exciting to see new players come into the player base. And yeah, just really thankful that you guys have grown my community in the Goons Cove YouTube page as the Predecessor community itself has grown. So more coming in the future, very exciting. But let's go ahead and get into this tier list. What I've done here is I've only broken it up into 5 tiers, and unlike some content creators that you're going to see when they make their tier list and put 75+% of the items in the top 2 tiers, we're going to try to get a nice distribution among the tiers. If anything, S tier is going to be the most empty tier. Man, we're going to go through here and place them. I have them categorized as S tier, always build. So, depending on what role you're playing, right, there's some items that you're just always going to build, and by always I mean 95+% of the time always build in S tier. Don't expect there to be too many in this, but there will be some in it. Similarly, at the bottom we have D tier, rarely built slash situational. There's probably going to be more in this tier than the S tier for sure, because there's more items that are situational than there are items that you always build. But again, I don't want to fill this tier up too much because I feel like most items are fairly balanced across the roles. Then we've got A tier, the stronger items. These are items that you're building most of the time, or that in my opinion you get some of the better value out of. 75% of builds are going to be using them and get good value out of them. B tier, which is kind of middle of the pack, good consistently, items that you're going to build, in a lot of situations. We're now on the 6-item patch, or the 6-item edition of Predecessor, so you're going to have items built in this that are from this tier in the majority of games, because you can't fill all 6 items up with overpowered items per se. You're going to have some in there for tech purposes, or for different sustain purposes, or leveling purposes, or pace of game fitting purposes. So a lot of cards will probably be, or a lot of items I should say, will probably be in the B tier. And then C tier, we have there are better options. So these are items that maybe do have a good role to play, but the majority of the time you're just building a better item in their place. So like I said, you're limited to 6 items plus your starter, so you can't have, you can't build all 6 of your items as OP items, but you definitely don't want to build all 6 of your items as weaker items that there are just simply better options for. So we're going to go through here, like I said, starting with all the Crest and evolutions, and then we're going to go through every item. I've done my best to make sure that I fit every item in here. Having to pull up this old list and then fit some of the newer added items into it, I may have missed one or two. I looked through it pretty carefully, so there's a chance for sure that I didn't miss any. But if I missed one or two items out of the total item list, let me know in the comments, and I will respond to you with where I think I'd like to place it. And then, like I said, I have the tonics here at the end because they're kind of the least consequential. You're only building them at the very end game situation most of the time. So let's get right into it. Hope you guys enjoy. This is going to be a little bit of a longer one, but I'm going to try to go through them as quick as I can. I have pulled up here beside me the main menu of Predecessor, so I can reference any of the items that I'm not completely familiar with, their exact function. I am familiar with probably, I would say, nearly all of these items because I have played all of the 5 roles quite a bit. So let's jump into it and see how we want to play these. Final disclaimer, this is going to be opinion based. I don't expect you to share all of the same opinions that I have, or all of the same experience I have. You may be someone who mains carry or mains jungle, and those aren't lanes that I play as much, or those aren't roles that I play as much. So leave your comments in the comments. That's what they're there for. And let me know where you would rearrange some of these items, or which ones I got wrong, and where you would move them to. So let's get right into it. We'll go right down the list here. First off, Rogue's Crest. Now, placing these Crest items is going to be a little weird because some of the Crest are better than others, I would say, but most of them, you have to take one. You're always, on one hand, you are always building one of them, so they could all go in the always build tier, but there is a little bit of stronger and weaker Crest, I would say. Rogue's Crest specifically here, I would say it is a stronger item. Rogue's Crest, like I said, I don't want to put all these in the always build category, even though you're always going to build them. But Rogue's Crest does give you, health restoration on hitting abilities, which is nice. And it gives you pin early, which is, good because even at the early levels, people are going to have armor from their leveling up. So you will get value out of the pin and the ability haste and whatnot. So Rogue's Crest is a stronger item for sure, but you're not always building it. It's not so strong that you're building it in every offensive lane. You're not building it on every jungler. you're actually building it on probably pretty few junglers and pretty few solo laners and pretty few carries. So always strong just because you're building one of these every time. Marksman Crest has got to go and always build, 90% of the time, or maybe 95% of the time, you're building Marksman Crest if you're playing carry, lifesteal, early like that, attack speed early like that is really what you want to get rolling for your carry, plus the on-hit healing, it's just a nice Titan's Crest. We're going to put that in stronger items. Right now, it's kind of outclassed at a lot of roles. It really depends on what hero you're playing, and what evolution of your starter crest that you want. But because you are building it sometimes in solo lane, you are building it sometimes at support, very rarely at support. So it's got to be in these stronger items. Consort Crest. Now, I don't like this crest. Straight up, I do not like this crest in comparison to the Guardian's Crest. I don't like the items that it evolves into, but we will be ranking those separately. So we're going to put it in the stronger items tier. It's a starter item that gives you mana regen early, gives you mana restoration on your hits, and it gives you that gold gain that you need. A lot of supports that are not intending on taking damage, like FaZe, Decker, the longer range supports, Muriel, that kind of deal. You're going to want Consort Crest more than Guardian's Crest, but you're not going to want the items that Consort Crest evolves into. So it's a little bit of a trade-off you have to make, but I would say Consort Crest itself does belong in the stronger tier. Now, in relation to that, we're going to put Guardian's Crest in the always build. Most of the time when you're playing a support, at least in the current meta, you want that healing and that gold gain from Guardian's Crest, and the items that Guardian's Crest gives you to build into are generally more impactful late game, in my opinion. And in the current meta of supports where you want someone who's tanky the majority of the time, with the exception of if your jungler and solo laner are both tanky, Guardian's Crest is going to be more valuable. Now we have Magician's Crest and Occult's Crest. Magician's Crest, you're building the majority of the time on mid laners. We're going to put it in always build. You get good build options out of it, or good evolution options out of it, and the mana regen at the mid lane is extremely valuable. Almost all mages, if it's not the preferred option, you can still get extremely good value out of Magician's Crest. So we'll put that up in the S tier. Occult Crest, just to show the kind of distinction, we're going to put it in the A tier. It is very strong and stronger than Magician's Crest on certain heroes, but in the majority of situations, Magician's Crest can do the same thing that Occult's Crest is really giving you. And at the mid lane specifically, which is where these crests are designed for, you benefit more from having the mana sustain than you do the health sustain. That's not to say, obviously, that someone like Quang or Crunch or Aurora or a magical damage hero in solo lane wouldn't prefer to have a Occult Crest, because they obviously would. But, the majority of the situations, Magician's Crest is going to be more valuable for you. And then we have Warrior's Crest. Warrior's Crest has got to be S tier. Omnivamp, guys. Omnivamp. We're not talking about lifesteal. We're not talking about magical lifesteal. We're talking about Omnivamp. This has got to be S tier. Having that early tier, that early game Omnivamp, even if it's a very small percentage, is just incredibly strong with the physical power, with the health, with the restored health when damaging heroes and monsters and unit kills. You're building this on a lot of junglers. You're building this on almost all solo laners. Warrior's Crest is for sure top tier. So now going into the items that are evolved out of these crests. First here we've got the 3 evolutions off of the Guardian's Crest. And all of these are going to be, you know, as far as these evolved crests, are going to be very situational. Even on the same hero, you're going to build a different one depending on what your matchups look like, but we're going to, you know, order them in the most average fashion that we can. Riftwalker. Now, Riftwalker, it is decent. It is decent. I would say it's good consistently. I would say it's not one that you're picking every time. It's not one of the stronger of the 3 picks, in my opinion. It does give you some very interesting options with the leap forward, the little short dash, and the pull enemies towards you type deal. You can get some good value out of it, but it's just good consistently. It's not one of the strongest 3. Sanctification. Now, Sanctification, you know, is good. I like shielding items. Shielding items are good. You know, gives your team tenacity while the shield holds up. It's not a ridiculously big shield. We'll put it in good consistently. I don't find myself taking it very often over its competition. You know, Riftwalker and Leaf Song both giving you movement speed is generally better than a shield. So we'll put it in good consistently. Leaf Song. Oh, what is going on here? There we go. Leaf Song. We're going to put Leaf Song up in the stronger items tier. Leaf Song giving all the nearby allies a movement speed boost that is this potent can swing fights. I mean, it is a 38% movement speed bonus for 4 seconds and immunity to slows, and can pass through other heroes so you don't have to worry about body blocking. This is essentially the strongest movement speed boost in the game, and it can affect your entire team at once if you're exiting an objective or something, or trying to close out a big team fight. So Leaf Strong honestly is borderline S tier, but in an attempt to not fully populate the S tier, and keeping in mind that you may, you know, it does have competition with certain situations where you want to run these, we're going to leave it in the A tier. Now, we're down to the 3 staffs that come off of the Consort Crest. These are generally the reason that I don't build Consort Crest even on heroes that I would like to have the mana regen early, because overall these aren't quite as strong or are harder to get their value out of compared to the other 3 items. So we'll start with Tranquility here. This is the one that gives a heal to nearby teammates. It's a decent heal, but we're kind of in a meta where healing isn't that valuable. They do get damage mitigation, but it's only for 2 seconds, so it's kind of hard to really value that. We'll put it in the good consistently tier, because why not heal your teammates and give them extra damage mitigation, and it's only on a 40-second cooldown, so you're going to be able to use it in most, if not all, fights, but generally not as strong, I would say, as Sanctification or Riftwalkers overall. Now we have this Malediction ability, or this Malediction upgraded item here. This is the Cleanse Yourself and Nearby Teammates one. This one seems on its face like it would be good, you know, cleanse your teammates of CCs or whatever, cleanse your teammates of stuns, but it's on a 150-second cooldown. Again, it's just, you know, if it was a cleanse and damage mitigation, or a cleanse and a movement speed boost, it would be exceptionally strong, but it's just not. It's just a 150-second cooldown for just a teammate cleanse. Maybe it's really good at the top tier, but it's just not that valuable most of the time compared to the other items you could build in its place. And then lastly here we have the Silentum. This one is the one that has the muzzle active. On a 120-second cooldown, you can silence a hero for 1.5 seconds. That is pretty good. I don't mind the silence. Depending on the enemy team's team comp, you can get a lot of value out of this if you silence, you know, a Gideon out of his ult, or you silence a Richter while he's trying to dive your team, or You know, something like that. You silence a Revenant when he's trying to get his combo off. You could get good value out of it, but again, it's on 120-second cooldown, so, you know, once per team fight at the most. You know, it's just okay. I like the other items. I like Leaf Song a lot better. Now, we are getting into the items that build off of the Occult Crest. Typhoon. I'm a big fan of Typhoon. Typhoon can give you the option to do certain things that simply no other item can do because it gives you attack speed scaling off of your magical power. I think for that alone, we have to probably put it in the A tier. You know, it's definitely not something you're always building, but it is very strong if you're doing any sort of hero that benefits from both magical power and attack speed. You're probably not beating out Typhoon for the value that it gives you. Plus, it gives you a little dash, so just, you know, even more added value on top. Can't beat it. Obelisk. Again, very strong. Unlimited stacking item. You know, if you can get it finished early and you can start stacking it up early, you can have a ton of extra magic power by the end of the game. So can't hate on Obelisk in the slightest. Obelisk, it is a little odd because you have to deal with the occult start. So if you're a mid lane, you have to deal with not having that mana regen, but if you get it off early, it can give you a lot of stacks, so it is very valuable. Tempest. Tempest we will put in the good consistently. It is good, but there are very few heroes really that are going to benefit heavily from it. You know, you've got heroes like Quang or Crunch or Aurora that are going to be close to the enemies enough, or going to be, you know, tight enough to the enemies to get good value out of it, get the healing out of it, and whatnot, but it's not that many heroes compared to how many heroes could get good value off of Obelisk or Typhoon. So, gotta be in B tier for me. Soul Bearer. Now, Soul Bearer is always one that's tempting to build after you've stacked up your Magician Crest. You know, do I just want the stasis, or would I rather just take the shield and the movement speed and the attack and the damage and lifesteal? You know, it's a toss-up. We're gonna put it in good consistently because it can keep you alive a lot of times, but most of the time, if you're going to die anyway, Soul Bearer isn't going to save you per se. It's just going to potentially add a little bit damage and lifesteal if you're trying to go for, like, if you're already in the back line. It's going to give you that shield and that movement speed to help you pursue into them deeper or chase into them more effectively. But it is only on a 90-second cooldown, and it does have an 8-second duration when you hit it, so not bad, but not exceptionally strong. Epoch, I'm going to put it in the stronger items. Epoch can save you in situations where nothing else can, essentially. It's only a 2.5-second stasis, and it is on a 120-second cooldown. But there's a lot of situations where, you know, you can use this to immune a Morigesh ult, or you could use this to immune a Murdoch ult, or whatever it may be. And even if you hit it and then die afterwards, in a situation where you're going to die anyway, that's not a lot of, you know, loss there. And if it allows your team to rotate into the situation better, or if you hit it in a team fight and it allows your team to take out the threat before they take you out, then you get your value out of it. So Epoch you're going to see built on a lot of mages for sure. Time Flux Band. I'm going to put it, actually, it's going to be our first guest in the there are better options. Time Flux Band can do some interesting stuff where you know, you're not using it to survive, you're using it to hit it and then full engage dive, dump all your damage, and then get teleported back. And in those situations, it is pretty good, and it is on a 90-second cooldown, but, you know, missing out on the stasis from Epoch or the lifesteal from Soul Bearer makes Time Flux Band a very rare pick for me. I wouldn't really put it on the tier of those other two. Now we're getting into the items that evolve off of the Rogue starter here. So first we've got Witch Stalker. Witch Stalker is interesting. I don't find myself building it a lot. We're going to put it in C tier. It can cleanse you of a debuff, which is exceptionally good anytime you can get a cleanse, and it can empower you to do more damage following that cleanse. But it's on a 150-second cooldown. You know, how valuable is a cleanse on a 150-second cooldown? Unless you're timing it up for one specific ability, and you're holding it for that in a 1v1 scenario, maybe, but most of the time your other two options are just too good, and you really shouldn't be building Witch Stalker. Very, very seldom are you building Witch Stalker. Next up, we've got Ortis. Ortis is very strong. We're going to put it in A tier. You know, this is a limitless stacking item, and I think this is pretty much the only physical power limitless stacking item. And it gives you movement speed. 20% movement speed for 8 seconds is a very significant amount of movement speed. And the percent power that it gives you is, like I said, percent. So great scaling even into the late game. Ortis is very strong. On someone like Zarus, you're building it every time. You know, you can build it on someone like Ability Revenant and get extra stacks when you're hitting your ultimate and stuff like that. So very strong item without a doubt. Next I'm A or B tier, right? For sure. We're gonna go in A tier. Just because the slow that it applies is one of the stronger slows in the game. Next gives you a dash to a short distance, and you deal damage to enemies, and you have increased damage based on how much damage you've done recently, and it applies an 80% slow for 1 second in an AoE. So just an extremely strong slow with a dash. You could potentially use it to escape. It's only on a 90-second cooldown. This is a very strong item, you know. Overall, you can use it for finishers or escapes, and great diversity on a short cooldown has got to be in the A tier for me. Now, off of the Titan Crest items here, we've got first up Razorback. Razorback is good. Razorback is good. You know, extra armors and reflecting pre-mitigated damage is good, because the pre-mitigated is key there, because it's going to be extremely high amount of damage. I do build it fairly often, but does it have... we're going to actually put it in B tier. I think the two items that it competes with are pretty strong, so I don't really want to place it on the same tier as those. It's kind of situational, really, whether you're building it. You get great value out of it if you're building all armor, but if you're building all health, as opposed to all armor, Razorback is not going to help you as much. So I think with Razorback being in B tier, I'm realistically going to move all three of these into there are better options. Now, clearly there can't be a better option for all three of them because they build out of the same starter item. But, you know, when you're competing with the Guardian Crest, I just would not place them on the same tier. Razorback really makes me see that, you know, on the same tier as Razorback, as Soulbearer, as Tempest, I just can't put them there. You have to be really good with these to get their value out of any of them. So we're going to actually move those down to the C tier there. Now, Nern War Boots, this is a good one. This is a very good one, guys. We're going to put it... oh, a little slow there. We're going to put it in A tier. Giving you 50% decaying movement speed for 5 seconds. And regenerating 2% of your health, max health every second for 5 seconds means you're getting 10% of your health back while you're getting that big movement speed boost. is quite good. I'm actually going to move it down to B tier. It's very good, but when you're looking at it in comparison to like Leaf Song, only you are getting that movement speed boost, so it's not quite as beneficial as giving your whole team that movement speed boost. And the 10% health regen is nice, but a lot of times that is not going to be enough to like swing a fight by yourself, you know. And if you're someone who built the Guardian Crest, you're probably not someone who's like running down their whole team and getting like a 4-man kill or nothing. So Naren War Boots, I do build it pretty frequently, but I wouldn't say it's on the tier of Nex and Ortis and, you know, Epoch Obelisk and all that. Now, Sapphire's Mantle, or Saphir's Mantle, or however you're supposed to pronounce this. We're gonna actually put this. Ooh, we're gonna put it in the stronger items A tier because it does give you limitless scaling or limitless stacking. Because you know the last line of it is after the duration, permanently increase your max health by 20% of the damage dealt. In a lot of games, this will give you an extra 300, 400, 500 max health by the end of the game, which is a pretty substantial amount. And when that's active and you have your actual max health increased by 12% for 6 seconds, it's pretty valuable in a team fight. Plus, it's on a 75-second cooldown, so I would say it's one of the stronger, if not the clear-cut strongest item out of those 3 Guardians Crest, especially late game. So, next up we have the warrior items. We have got Ice-Scorn Talons. Ice-Scorn is obvious A tier, speeding up nearby teammates and giving you extra physical power, and slowing down the enemy is incredibly strong. It's on a very short cooldown. You're building this, you know, if you're building Warrior's Crest, you're building this the majority of the time on most heroes, so gotta be A tier. Judgment, pretty strong. I like Judgment a lot. Does it deserve A tier? I'm going to actually put it B tier. I think after the recent change where it got less physical power scaling and more just base damage, it kind of isn't as good as it was before, because you do heal from it, but the healing is not like super substantial. The benefit to it really is that it's on a short cooldown and you can use it to get extra clear and just one extra damage ability in there in AoE that you don't have to target. So good item, but and definitely good consistently, but definitely not on Ice-Scorn's level. I think probably about the same thing applies for Brutalix. You know, it is good to have a cleanse and a tenacity boost, and the fact that it can stay going for longer if you're basic attacking is good. It makes it valuable on certain heroes or where you're building high attack speed, but you know, 150-second cleanse just can't really compete. I'm tempted to put it in the C tier. Actually, we are going to put it in the C tier. You really are rarely building this compared to Judgment or Ice-Scorn. You know, it just can't quite compete with those. There are better options. Next, we are up to the final crest evolutions, which are the Carry Crest. These, you know, we'll take a look at them here individually, but they're kind of, you know, very dependent on the situation. First, we have Eviscerator here. I think it deserves C tier. You know, I don't think that it really gives you enough to compete with the other 2 options. It gives you attack speed, it gives you extra damage on your basics, and it is only on a 60-second cooldown and lasts 6 seconds, but all it does is boost your damage. So, you know, as a carry, you should be doing enough damage anyway to where this extra, you know, a little bit, you know, this extra 15 to 20% damage boost should not be the make or break between if you get the finishes off or if you get the multi-kill off or not. You should be able to get it regardless. So compared to the other ones that gives you extra bonuses, that's just not that good. Liberator is very good. It is 150-second cooldown, again, like some of these other cleanses, but it at least gives you more than just extra damage. It gives you a cleanse, it gives you a shield, and sometimes that is more likely to be the make or break between if you win the 1v1 or if your team wins the team fight versus just do you do extra damage. So I'll take the cleanse over the extra damage any day. And then finally, for the Crest evolutions, we have Pacifier. Pacifier... does it go in A or B tier? If Liberator's in B tier, I think we're going to put Pacifier in A tier. It gives you a short dash. It is a very short dash at that, realistically, but a lot of carries that have no mobility benefit from that heavily. You get flat extra damage dealt while it's up, for 3 seconds. And if you get a kill while it's going, it increases the duration, or you can recast it. And so that makes multi-kill potential bigger on Pacifier than Liberator or Eviscerator. So Pacifier is definitely one of the stronger items. Now, time to get into the actual tier 3 items that you're building. Starting with Absolution, this item is on a 45-second cooldown to give you damage mitigation and movement speed upon being immobilized. I don't see you really building this much. Pretty much on any carry, you could fit it into some niche assassin builds and stuff. It gives you magical armor, it gives you decent power and attack speed, but most of the time you're not building it. There are better options for you to build. There are niche situations where you can build it, and I don't want to put it in D tier because the actual stat spread on it is very strong, being 40 physical power, 25% attack speed, 20% tenacity mainly is really strong, plus 20 armor on top, magical armor. We'll put it in C tier. Ashbringer. Ashbringer. Ashbringer, I'm actually going to put in the D tier. You're really rarely building this, if ever. Very few heroes are really going to get that most value out of it. You have to be, on one hand, auto-attacking constantly, and also wanting to have your abilities up constantly. And in the current meta, there's not that many heroes that are building enough attack speed and crit to really get the value out of this. I'm gonna move it up to C tier because it does give you 25 ability haste, which is about the highest in the game that you can get from a single item. So there are certain heroes where ability haste is just so important to you that you are building it, but it's still not that good. There are definitely better options that you're building most of the time. Astral Catalyst. Now this is one, again, I don't see very many people building. It is one of the shield damage based items, or one of the items that does bonus damage when you're attacking enemies with a shield. Its other passive is you reduce your ultimate by 20% when you get a takedown, so that's just kind of okay. The stat spread is good, but all of the magic item stat spread are good. So rarely build or situational, specifically when the enemies are building shields or have heroes with a lot of shields is really the only time that you're building it. Augmentation. Augmentation is a stronger item. Augmentation is a stronger item. For what it does, it's hard to beat. 20 ability haste is a lot to come by. Giving you 300 health is a lot to come by. And the ability use auto attack power is pretty strong on it. For someone who's building a bunch of health, it's kind of a must build item most of the time. Azura Core. Ooh. Ooh, Azure Core. I'm tempted to put Azure Core S. I'm very tempted to put Azure Core S. But we will put it A tier. It's not something that you're building every single game. It is very strong. It does. The shield is good. Yeah, we're doing it. We're putting it in S tier. The fact that you can build Alchemical Rod off of it and get stacks for the late game, it's such a cheap entry cost. It's not technically an always build, but about 90% of the mages can benefit from it heavily if you have the time to get it built and are willing to play around it and be a little passive. So we'll put it in the S tier. First actual tier 3 item, making it into the S tier just for the price point. You know, it's so cheap to get into. You can build that second tier Alchemical Rod and just forget about it until you have all your other 5 items built. So gotta be up here. Too cheap to get into for how much power it gives you. Basilisk, A tier. A lot of heroes proc it very well. You know, Pin is king in my opinion. Especially after the number crunching that I've done, Pin is very much king. Highly recommend Basilisk on heroes that can proc it effectively. Shredding your opponent armor helps your whole team do more damage, not just you. And it has a decent stat spread. I mean, if we look at it here, 350 health is a lot. 15 ability haste is great. And then if you do fully stack up the shred, the armor shred on it, you get an extra 3% target missing health as damage on hit. So just a really good finisher and a really good armor shredder. Bone Saw. This is an item that has seen some adjustments in the past, but I think we've got to put it A tier. You know, it gives you 500 health. You know, and it gives you a slowdown ability and a every third basic attack extra damage that scales with your health. So really can't complain. It can stack up to 3 times if you have enough attack speed built to consistently auto someone. Bonesaw can keep them slowed and keep your attack speed boosted with 500 health to boot. Not bad. Caustica, easy S tier. No debate. Please debate me in the comments on Caustica being S tier. Build it every single time. I don't think we need to discuss it. Percent pin is king. Just always build it. Don't argue with it. If you're mid laner, build it. Period. Citadel. Citadel I have come to like more and more recently. We're gonna put it in A tier with the pin being king as far as how you get damage onto people. And the fact that this pin is just an aura, so on nearby enemy heroes have their physical armor decreased by 20. You know, an effective 20% pin for your entire team is massive. And it keeps you alive well. 250 health is good. Extra armor for nearby heroes is good. Can't complain. Combustion, I would say, I'm going to say there are better options. From the testing that we did, Combustion just didn't really stack up that well for the late game. It does help you on certain heroes, get your tempo up by helping you clear early, but it's just not that good late game. It's not worth having. It's on too long of a cooldown at 15 seconds, and there are better options I would like to build as my first item. I mean, if you're building Combustion's second or third item, you're past the point where Combustion is really that beneficial, so there are better options for sure. Crystal Tier. Crystal Tier is one of those where only certain heroes are building it. You could say that for all of the items, all the support items that give you extra heal and shield power. But Crystal Tier, you know, if you're Muriel, you're building it. Basically, its passive is on healing or shielding heroes. You both gain 30 power and 15 ability haste for 5 seconds. That's good. But even on like Muriel and Narbash builds, I'm not building it every single time. So we're going to put it in there are better options. Nah, we're putting it in situational. If I'm not building this every single time on Muriel, which you probably should be building this every single time on Muriel, and I still don't. So it's not that broken, it's not that overpowered. Crystalline, Curus, it's good consistently. It's one of the stronger magic armor items. It has a good passive. You know, magic items are hard to come by. Magic armor items are hard to come by. So gotta be in the good consistently tier for me. Death Stalker. Now, Death Stalker kind of occupies a weird space because it gives you attack speed based off of your pin, and it gives you base attack speed, and it gives you armor shred, but it's not something that you're just building on very many heroes. We're going to put it in the good consistently. I believe pin is king, and you could make a strong argument that it belongs in A tier, but you know, how many heroes can you build this on and get good value out of it compared to its competition, if we're being realistic? So we're just going to slot it right here in the B tier. Looking at Demolisher, you know, I mean, I think we know where this is going, right? S tier, without a doubt. You know, percent pin is king. If you're building percent pin, you know what's up. It's the percent pin that gives you crit. So, you know, if you're already on a crit build, this is your pin item. Decent passive with the Deicide 2, giving you bonus, you know, percent damage based on if your health. If you're building a glass cannon, you can even get good use out of this from some assassins. So, yeah, no brainer, S tier. Okay, Demon Edge. Demon Edge. It's another one of those pretty situational ones. You know, you're using it to damage shielded targets. We're going to put it in rarely build or situational. It has a great stat distribution, but unless their team has multiple targets that are putting up shields, you're probably not getting more value out of it than its competition. Okay, Draconum. Draconum is an interesting one. The healing boost that it gives you is pretty substantial, and definitely can outpace the healing that you could get from Void Helm, you know, which is your other big heal boost item. And, you know, on takedowns, giving you all that health is really nice. We're going to put it in the good consistently. You know, you are building it frequently on heroes that you're expecting to actually be the one that gets the takedown on, like maybe Grux or certain other solo laners, certain junglers. You're building it on because it gives you power and haste, but it's not one of the top items. I would take Citadel over it for sure most of the time. Dread. This is another pretty situational one, you know, giving you magical armor. You know, realistically, there are probably more situations where you could get good value out of it versus when you're actually tempted to build it. You know, we're going to say there are better options. C tier here. It is strong. I want to put it potentially in D tier, but if you stack its actual stat profile up against like Mist Meadow Buckler, it does compete pretty well. So we're going to put it in C tier. Dream Binder. Dream Binder is good consistently. It offers you a unique effect for your mid laners, and it gives you a good health bonus. The actual slowdown that it provides isn't exceptionally strong because it's only 25% for 1 second, but 350 health is a good enough stat line to at least earn it B tier. Dust Devil. Now, I'm not really one who builds Dust Devil very frequently. Its passive is on basic attacking heroes, gain 3% attack speed for 3 seconds, and it stacks up to 6 times, and then you gain movement speed if you're at 6 stacks. We're going to say good consistently. A lot of people do like to build it for the movement speed if you're able to stack it up. If you're hitting all your autos and you're building a big crit build, Dust Devil will give you that extra movement speed to glue to people better. Dynamo. Dynamo has got to be an A tier. Dynamo offers you some pretty unique benefits that kind of make it applicable to more heroes. The way that its passive works is, 8% bonus damage after immobilizing for 2.5 seconds, which is pretty strong. Any sort of percent scaling is strong. But the other side of the passive is just extra physical power, or if you have more magical power, you get magical power instead. So very wide application case for Dynamo. Anyone that's applying CC can get good use out of it. 300 health, 20 physical armor. Nothing to hate on there. Ella Frost. Ella Frost has got to go in the stronger items tier. Not that many items give you decent mana regen. So a lot of times at solo lane, if you're someone who wants to use your abilities more frequently and not have to worry about your mana usage, you need something to keep your mana up. This gives you health, it gives you armor, it gives you a nice slowdown passive, and it gives you the mana regen. Big fan of Ella Frost here. Not quite in the always build category, but it is in the upper side of A tier for sure. It's very strong. Fire Blossom. So Fire Blossom, it does give you very strong 1v1 potential if you build it first item in solo lane. It does give you good damage all game long with its good scaling. We're going to put it in the stronger items category. It probably does belong with Ella Frost as far as physical armor items go. Gives you just, nice AoE damage, nice clear in situations that you're building it for the clear. Can't really hate on Ella Blossom. Still a great value with the health added. Flux Matrix. Again, I would say it's one of the stronger health and armor items in the magical armor tree where you don't have that many options. Flux Matrix can really boost your damage while boosting your survivability if you're building on certain solo laners. So deserves probably to be A tier. Frost Guard, we're going to, I think belongs in B tier here, honestly. Actually, realistically, I'm going to put it C tier. Frost Guard is good in certain situations, but most of the time there are better options than it. It doesn't give you health. It does give you, physical and magical armor, but the fact that it doesn't give you health and the fact that its passive is just reduce your opponent's attack speed passive is just kind of okay. Most of the time you're building a better armor item over it. Galaxy Greaves. I like Galaxy Greaves a lot. I would say it's good consistently. On the heroes that you are building it on, it is good consistently. To be able to rotate lane to lane faster, get out of base faster, and have the tall jump to potentially survive. You've got certain heroes like FaZe where that tall jump is even more beneficial because you can hit your line ability while up there and get great value out of it. So you could make an argument for A tier, but I think it's and I like the mana regen off of it too, but I think it's just good consistently. If it gave you health in some manner, if it gave you 150 health, it would definitely be in the A tier, but that would be asking a lot for it because it does give you decent stat distribution. Golem's Gift. I'm going to put it in good consistently. In the situations that you are building it, on the heroes that you do want both magical power and physical armor, it's about your best option available. Pretty strong passive overall, the way that it stacks up. And just, certain heroes, like I said, the value on it is going to be nearly unmatchable. Someone like Quang, or someone like a tanky support that's building Golem's Gift are going to get better value out of it for sure than most other options that kind of do the same thing that it does. So I think that's a fair placement for it. Next, we've got Hexbound. Now, Hexbound kind of feels a weird niche because you want to have it early to get the most value out of it, but it still gives you decent armor but no health. It gives you mana restore and ability haste, but we're going to put it in B tier. There are situations where you build it and get good value out of it. There's situations where you build it first item, so it probably belongs in B tier, but and not in C tier. So yeah, I think it's a decent place. 20 ability haste is enough to justify it being not in C tier for sure. Imperator. I mean, it belongs in A tier. I mean, giving someone who's already building full crit extra crit damage is like a no-brainer. Once you have your attack speed built, and once you have your 60%-ish, even 40% crit chance online, Imperator is going to make you hit so much harder. Your DPS is going to spike with Imperator. Not as much as it would with a pin item, like Demolisher, but it's going to make it spike. So must build. Anyone who's building 5 crit items and going 100% crit chance, it's a must build. But an A tier for sure. You're not building it every time because you may want to mix in some crit and some on-hit procking, but it's up there. It's close to S tier. Infernum, good consistently. Late game damage based on your opponent's max health is quite strong. A lot of heroes can get good use out of it. Even someone like Iggy and Scorch can get good use out of it just because they're hitting abilities constantly, but it's not like broken by any means. I mean, what is its stat spread? Let me look at its stat spread real quick. Its stat spread is 40 physical power, 6 pin, 250 mana, and 15 ability haste. Man, that is a pretty good stat spread. We're going to put it in A tier. I think it actually is pretty strong. That's a good stat spread to combo with other items like Resolution or Azure Core if you're on Iggy and Scorch or something like that. 15 ability haste is valuable. And decent scaling into the late game. I think that's a strong contender for A tier. Kingsbane. Now, this was once an item that I would say is pretty much a must build back when we were on the on-hit meta before they nerfed its attack speed. Now I would just say it's probably good consistently. It gives you ability haste. It gives you solid extra damage on hits. And it gives you extra attack speed and stuff, but it doesn't give you what it used to. It's not a must build like it used to be. It doesn't give you crit chance. So in a meta where a lot of times you're building crit, it may not fit into your build realistically. Legacy. Now, Legacy is just kind of okay. I've always looked at Legacy when I look at it and thought, man, if that passive was on a shorter cooldown, it would just be insanely good and I would build it as my magical armor item. But it's simply not. It's simply on too long of a cooldown. There are for sure better options. Actually, you know what? I think it probably belongs in the D tier. Rarely are you building Legacy. I mean, you're building an item that gives you physical power and magical armor, haste, tenacity, and a self-cleanse with CC immunity, which is nice, but you've got to go below 40% health to activate it, and it's on a 120-second cooldown. There are just better magical armor items in this game. You've got Miss Meadow Buckler you can just build over this, and it's most likely going to do more for you. So rarely am I seeing anyone build Legacy. It just is what it is. Leviathan. Now this item is now called Tainted Bastion. This is your magical armor and anti-heal on hit by abilities item. Anti-heal is always strong. We're going to put it in an A tier. If you're looking for an item that gives you magical armor and health, and so therefore Mist Meadow Buckler isn't an option, and you don't have another anti-heal item built, then Tainted Bastion is getting built by you, 9 times out of 10, or at least it should be. The competition for the magical armor items is pretty stiff, and it's among the better of them. Plus, you get percent mitigation. So raw percent mitigation, which late game is going to keep you alive better than most armor. Just having that actual percent mid. Life Binder. Life Binder is okay. I usually find myself building it thinking that it's going to be able to, like, oh man, as I get lower health, I'll do more damage and get more lifesteal, so I'll be able to recover from being low health. That's never really how it works. We're going to put it in C tier. There's not very many magical items that can give you lifesteal, which kind of makes me think I probably should move it up to B tier. But in the end, someone who's building magical lifesteal with this type of item, unless we're talking specifically about Aurora or Quang, or somebody who's doing all magic damage, but they're also a physical type, maybe Countess gets good use out of it. But the majority of mages, they're just better options. The lifesteal isn't going to keep you alive like you think it is. There are so many mage items that give you really strong passives. This one just does not quite stack up with those. So there are better options than Lifebinder, let's be realistic. Lightning Hawk. Again, it's not one that I build often. I know some people do really like it. It does give you your attack speed. It does give you your crit. And it does give you a slow option. But is it stronger than Dust Devil? Not really. B tier at best. If you're on a crit build, it's probably, there's a chance it's going to be one of your crit items, but it's not an A tier item by any means. Magnify. I think we got to put Magnify in the A tier. Oh, did we not grab it? Magnify. Yeah. I think we got to put Magnify in the A tier here. One of the kind of fewer items that give you Omnivamp at the magical power category. A good passive that you're going to proc consistently. A good stat spread. Heroes that are doing melee attacks that you're building magical power on benefit from building the health from it very much. So, and the pin. Pin is king. 15%, shred 15% of your target's magical health for 4 seconds is incredibly strong. Honestly, I'm putting it in S tier. I got to. On heroes that you want magical power, health, Omnivamp, and armor shred, I don't think there's an item that competes with it. I don't think there's even a single other item that can give you all of those stats at once. So Magnify S tier. That's kind of a stretch. It could be top of A tier, but it just gives you a stat distribution that nothing else really gives you. So kind of stands alone in that aspect. Next we have Milady. This is kind of a hard one to rank because it can be very valuable if you build it early and then stack it a lot. We're going to go A tier with it because there are certain heroes where Milady, first or second item, really makes the build significantly stronger. I'm thinking Kalari. I'm thinking solo laners that are building full damage or trying to burst, assassins. Gives you just really good finishing potential, gives you better clear, decent stat distribution. It only gives you 7 physical pin. If it gave you 10, then I would say it's really strong, but 7 is still okay. That's still up there. Marshall. Oh, we grabbed Tainted Scepter. We'll go ahead and rank Tainted Scepter. Tainted Scepter, it is really nice to have anti-heal, and the extra passive giving you more damage, even if you don't needing the anti-heal, is strong. We're going to put it in B tier. A lot of the times you're not building Tainted Scepter on your mid laner, per se. You know, a lot of times you're trying to fit 6 items in there that are just going to maximize your damage. And Tainted Scepter generally isn't that item unless you're against someone who's healing a lot, or unless they have multiple people on their team that's healing. It doesn't quite break up into the upper tier of magical items that you're building consistently. I'm kind of tempted to put it in C tier, but just the fact that it gives you anti-heal in a situation where you need anti-heal, you need anti-heal. So, you know, it's still very buildable. Marshall, here we go. I think I kind of like Marshall as an A tier, one of the stronger items that you're going to build for the role. As a Muriel or as a Narbash, you're building it pretty much every game. I hope you're building it every game. I build it first every game. The attack speed aura can give your carry a huge boost early. And the mana regen is just, you know, it's going to be necessary. So, you know, good item. I mean, stronger item. Stronger than its competition for the most part. Very unique effect. Megacosm. Realistically, this probably belongs in S tier, doesn't it? We're going to put it in S tier. I don't like that tier maker logo is obstructing it so much. That's really goobery. Yeah, wow, that's really goobery there. I don't know what's up with that, but Megacosm S tier. I mean, late game Megacosm doing that tick damage and you being able to apply it to their whole team. You know, it's a really good tank burner. The fact that it combos so well with Worldbreaker is just excels it right into the S tier. If Worldbreaker wasn't in the game, I would say it's probably an A tier where you're building it most of the time. But on mages, you really are probably building Megacosm like as one of your 6 items. Like, you're going to tell me that you're going to find 6 mage items better than Megacosm? I kind of doubt it. Like, you know, the late game damage that it does, even the early game damage that it does is pretty impressive. So S tier for me on Megacosm. Mesmer, you're not seeing a lot of people build Mesmer. You're not seeing a lot of people build Mesmer. Does it belong in D tier though? It's a good stat distribution. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a good stat distribution. Yeah, we're gonna put it in C tier just because it is a good stat distribution. 300 health on an item that also gives you 8 flat physical pin, and 40 physical power is very strong. The passive is decent for sure, not exceptional. Generally, there are better items that you're building on it. If you want more survivability, you can build an item that gives you power and health like Salvation, and give you good survivability, but it's a good addition to builds where you're going glass cannon and you just want to immune one ability in a team fight that could keep you alive. So it's situational, but you know, and there are better options, but it's not quite like really bad. I would say its stat distribution is too good to really put it in D tier. Mind Razor, again, this item was a little different before when it was the stacking item. It's no longer a stacking based item, but it does give you good AoE clear. It does give you good AoE clear. We're going to put it in B, good consistently. Certain heroes that you need the clear from it, you're building it every time, but on heroes that you don't need clear, you're not building it pretty much anymore. It's just not, you know, it's not the move. 300 mana and 20 ability haste is cool, but you can build other items in the assassin tree that give you that much heat. Mutilator. Now, Mutilator is very good. After the buff, A tier. A tier for me. Mutilator, it was decent before, then they buffed its Omnivamp to now be more powerful. it's really your strongest Omnivamp item. It is very expensive at 3,300 to get online. It takes longer to get it online as your first item, but it doesn't come with health like Augmentation. A lot of times Augmentation is kind of the competition for it, but it fits a different niche than Augmentation. It gives you a 12% Omnivamp, just very strong, good tank killing potential with the damage based off of their max health. So A tier for me. You're building it first item on a lot of solo laners and even some junglers, so you know, gotta be A tier if you're building it first item that often. Nightfall, there's not a lot of heroes that you're building it on, but when you are building it, it's nice to have. One of its passives, it only benefits of you if you're getting takedowns. I think I want to go. See, if I put it in C tier, a lot of people are going to say, hey, I build Nightfall every time when I play Feng Mao, or, you know, I build Nightfall every time when I play this hero, or whatever, you know. And that's understandable. That's understandable. Actually, yeah, we're going to put it in B. It does offer the unique ability to heal off of your ability damage dealt to heroes specifically. It doesn't give you that healing when you're dealing it to minions, but it does give you good lifesteal. Doesn't give you good 8% pin, or just 8 flat pin. And if you are the one who's getting the takedowns in the fight, you get a shield from it that can keep you alive longer. So good overall. Oathkeeper, really good stat distribution on Oathkeeper and a good passive. I think we're going to go in A tier. I generally like Magnify more than it, but Oathkeeper is very similar. So if you like what Magnify does, you know, build Magnify as well as Oathkeeper. You're going to get double procs, you're going to get extra damage, you're going to get extra health. Just a good item on melee magical heroes. You're building it the majority of the time. Oblivion Crown. Now this is, I could put it in S tier because there's a lot of mages that would benefit from having that power. But if I'm being honest, there's some builds where I want the tech more than I want the power. You know, not all magical power, or mid laners I should say, get that good of scaling to where the pure power is worth it over another pin item. You know, you could build Wraith Leggings here, you could build Combustion here, even though I'm not a fan of Combustion. You could build Combustion here, and if you're only poking every 15 seconds, Combustion's probably going to be comparably valuable to Oblivion Crown. But it is a stronger item, and you will put it as one of your 6 items, you know, last item a lot of the times on your mage build, so it deserves to at least be up here in contention for S tier probably. Omen, I'm not really building Omen that often. You know, similar passive to like Gaia Greaves. You know, you when you're moving around, your next basic gets more damage. It does give you pin, and it does give you haste. I would say there are better options. I'm not going to put it all the way in D tier in the rarely build or situational, even though you are rarely going to build Omen. I'm sure that the heroes that you do build Omen on, it's very valuable. Like I'm thinking Kolari, maybe. I'm thinking potentially a Chimera could get good use out of it. You could probably get good use out of it with Crunch if your other items are very bulky. But you know, Aurora maybe, Quang maybe, I don't know, but it's not quite D tier. I don't think it's still got decent value to it. Overlord, A tier. Overlord, percent of your health as power is great. AoE damage for clears is great. Overlord, first item, specifically makes some junglers more viable that would not be viable if they didn't have Overlord and instead they had to build Mind Razor. They just wouldn't quite be as good. So A tier for Overlord. You see it built a lot. I mean, that's self-explanatory there. Pain Weaver. Pain Weaver is one of the very few items that gives you 50 physical power right off rip, which is quite strong, and 8 physical pen is quite good, plus extra penetration and movement speed when casting abilities. I think this is a no-brainer to A tier. On the heroes that get the most out of this, on the heroes that are spamming abilities, that pen is going to come through strong, that movement speed is going to come through strong, and it's a big power number. So on assassins, on burst type assassins specifically, Pain Weaver is hard to compete with. Prophecy. Again, very unique item. Offers you something that not a lot of other items build. We're going to put it in A tier. On the heroes that you're building it on, it's probably considered an S tier because it probably makes those heroes viable, and without it they just wouldn't work. But getting extra attack speed is for someone who's doing like magical, and getting your magical power contributing to your on-hit basic attacks is very particular. It's very particular, but on the heroes that you need it on, and they wouldn't do nearly as much damage without it, so A tier seems pretty reasonable to me. Remnant of Renewal. There are almost always better options than Remnant of Renewal. The fact that it gives you no armor is really unfortunate. If it gave you 10 of each armor, it would easily be like A tier, but just that the fact that it gives you a bunch of health and no armor, and the health regen only activates when you're out of combat. I'm tempted to put it B. But there's probably only like 5 maybe heroes that you're building it on, or builds where you specifically want to eclipse like 3,000 built health you're building it on, but other than that, it's probably just a C tier. I've tried building it sometimes, and I just don't feel very survivable in team fights, so you can get the most out of it by engaging and then backing up, healing, and then re-engaging, but does that really compete with your burst engagement survivability of building something like, a big armor item, Stone Wall, or Warden's Faith, or, something like that? Probably not, Maybe. It's still in contention. Resolution. I think we're going to put Resolution in S tier. Even on the builds, again, I don't like that Tier Maker's covering that up, but, it is what it is. Even on the builds where you don't build Resolution, you can always think, if I would have built Resolution first, I would be doing more damage now. So any item that's like that is really like, you get good stacks out of it. You build it first or second item at the latest, and you're guaranteed basically to do more damage by the end of the game on pretty much every carry. So S tier for me on a good value stacking item. Similar to Azura Core's Alchemical Rod, you can build a Chalice out of it early for cheap, get your stacks off, and then come back and finish Resolution later. So not a lot of downsides to it. Salvation. I like Salvation. I think it probably belongs in the B tier, realistically. It's a good passive for proccing, the fact that it gives you power and so much health is very good, but you're not fitting it into every build. But I do like it. It does feel good when you do fit it into a build. Sky Splitter, it's not S tier. It definitely used to be S tier, but we're going to put it in A tier. You can build it on most carries as your attack speed and lifesteal item, and be happy with it, as that role. But if you're building a full crit build, you're better off building a full crit build, and building Imperator or Demolisher, obviously. But comparing it to what other items do we have here? I mean, comparing it to Dust Devil and Lightning Hawk, I would say it's actually pretty close. It's just a different build type that you're building it on. If you're building full attack speed, Sky Splitter's probably going to get you as much value as those two. But if you're not building a full attack speed build and you're building crit, then it is what it is. Dust Devil is probably going to be better. So A tier just for the legacy of it. The fact that it used to be built first item on every single mage, or on every single carry, has got to earn it an A tier contention still. Spell Breaker, very unique item, gives you that same sort of protection that the Mesmer gives you. It would not be fair to put it in a different category than Golem's Gift. It is more valuable than Golem's Gift in a lot of situations, and magical armor items are harder to come by, but you're not building it on most heroes. It's just certain heroes that you're going to build it on. You could build it on more mid laners if you're just struggling, but ideally you want to save all 6 of your spots for your mid laner for more damage. So just B tier. It is good consistently. I don't think anyone would argue that it is good consistently, but let's see what kind of mid laner item we have to compare it to in this tree. We don't actually have a lot of mid laner items right now in the A tree. We have Tainted Scepter. We're going to leave it in B for now. We may move it up to A depending on how the list shakes out. Stone Wall. I like Stone Wall for sure. I think it probably belongs in A tier. The mitigation that it gives, the percent mitigation that it gives if you're building a lot of physical armor, is pretty much unbeatable. 350 health is really good too, but if you think about getting 15% physical mitigation from this, which is what it's going to be around if you're building like near 200 physical armor on a big tank build, that's like almost irreplaceable. Plus 350 health and 60 armor is got to be an A tier as far as tank items go. Stormbreaker, I think it probably belongs in A tier too. The heroes that need it, or the heroes that want to start it for their attack speed and their extra clear, it's hard to pick an item that can really compete with it as far as what's going to give you better clear early and what's going to give you more attack speed early. Stormbreaker is really the move the majority of the time. Get it stacked up and you'll be fine. Tainted Blade. I like Tainted Blade in theory. I don't build it enough. I don't build it as much as I should. Because it does give you great percent scaling and it takes away healing. We're going to put it in good consistently. Not quite A tier because it's just hard to fit it in a lot of builds where you'd like to have it. And you're probably going to get your anti-heal from your armor item on those like bruiser type builds. But if you've got the space for it, if you're on someone like Fang Mao, maybe, or Crunch, maybe, Greystone, potentially, you're going to get good value out of it for sure, but it is hard to fit in, so probably B tier. Tainted Guard. I like Tainted Guard. I think it's just a little bit below Tainted Bastion in its usability. The fact that it gives you extra damage on people that hit you is always nice, and reduces their healing. It can give you good 1v1 potential if you build it early against certain matchups. So A tier is pretty comfortable with it in A tier there. Tainted Rounds. Now you don't always want your carry to be the one who has to build anti-heal, but in situations where your carry is 1v1ing, anti-heal is very nice to have. I think we're going to put it in B tier, good consistently. If you're on a crit build where you're building 5 crit items, Tainted Rounds is most likely one of those items, but it's not an absolute must build. You can sneak some of these other items in its place and be just fine. So, I don't know. The anti-heal value is strong. We're just not in that much of a healing meta. And if there's one person I'd have to pick to not build anti-heal, it'd be my carry. So B tier I think will be good for me there. Tainted Totem. Tainted Totem. It's kind of a niche item. You want anti-heal, but do you want your support to have to build Tainted Totem over a Tainted Armor item? You're building it like every time, potentially on Muriel. Oh, I have Wraith Leggings selected. Tainted Totem. I think we're going to put it B tier. I don't see it getting fit into a lot of people's builds, even though it probably should be fit into more. It kind of gives you a spreading anti-heal effect if you're someone who's shielding or healing, you know, Narbash and Muriel. You can give multiple players on your team anti-heal benefits. And it is a very strong stat distribution, I would say. We're going to leave it in B tier just because I don't see it get built very often, even though it likely does deserve to be built more often. Wraith Leggings, come on. You know, A tier for sure. Borderline S tier. Did it not? Oh, it shot right up here to the middle of S tier. I think it's A tier. It does have a contention to be an S tier. Very strong, great finishing potential, great movement speed bonus. We're going to put it in S tier, actually. We are going to put it in S tier. I think that nearly every mid laner can benefit from building it. If you're someone who wants to finish the takedowns and do big damage, Wraith Leggings value from a stat standpoint, from a passive standpoint, the fact that it offers movement speed and not much else does, is really good. I mean, I think S tier. I think you're building it. I mean, yeah, I hope you're building it most of the time on your mid laners. Terminus B tier. If you want the anti-heal, I mean, if you want the lifesteal and you want the sustain, you can build it. It does give you a good stat distribution. It's just not quite the meta right now to build it every single time. It doesn't give you attack speed. So I think a solid B tier is probably fair for it. Perforator, come on. Do I even need to discuss this? Perforator, okay, it dropped off. S tier, please and thank you. Perforator, build it. Guys, build it. Build your percent pin. If you're the assassin, build your percent pin. If you're the jungler who's relying on abilities, build your percent pin. Perforator's the item for you. Gives you slowdowns on top. Just a great item. Build it in a solo lane. If you build 5 tank items, 4 tank items, and then Perforator, you still do good damage, I promise. You know, build your percent pin, guys. Late game, it's unbeatable. Time Warp. Time Warp, here we go. S tier. S tier for me, Time Warp. Unmatched cooldowns, guys. I mean, nothing is giving you the cooldown potential that this gives you. It gives you all the mana regen you need for sure in one item. If you're waiting to build Caustica like 5th item, potentially, and you need the mana regen earlier, you can just build Time Warp 2nd item and be completely fine all game. Really hard, like impossible to match the cooldowns that Time Warp gives you. Build it if you want your abilities to be spammed and you don't want to run out of mana. You know, very, very good. True Silver Bracer. I don't build this very often, to be honest with you. Certain heroes that can be very good. You know, you want to build it on someone like Narbash, so you can be CC immune while you're ulting and have the shield. You know, you could potentially build it on somebody like Gideon if you're worried about getting, you know, CC'd out of your ultimate. although you probably aren't going to want to be building it on them because you're going to want to build more damage items. We're going to put it in good consistently. It is good when you do build it, but it's not something you're going to build on very many heroes in very many situations. So, Unbroken Will, I think it's a solid A tier. It just glitched out again and placed it somewhere else. It's getting really laggy with all these items in here. Unbroken Will, easy A tier. Percent scaling on your armors when you get CC'd, or when you get immobilized, I should say, is when you need your armors the most, because that's when their team is going to try to turn and dump their damage on you. And it also gives you a good stat distribution at 20% tenacity, 500 health, and 35 magical armor. You know, its competition for the magical armor slot in your build isn't too stiff. You should probably be building it. If you're building 2 magical armor items in your build, I would almost guarantee you Unbroken Will should be one of them. Whether you're doing it now or not, it should be one of them, because it'll keep you alive. It'll keep you alive majorly. 25% of both armor on being immobilized is great. Vanguardian. I wish Vanguardian was better. Guys, I really wish Vanguardian was better, or I wish it was split into 2 separate items, one that gives your team a magical armor aura and one that gives your team a physical armor aura, because Vanguardian just is not that good. I still build it because sometimes I don't have any other good options as the support role, but it just doesn't give you as much value as I like. It needs to give you more armor to be valuable. Or it needs to give your teammates, you know, plus 50% health regen or something on it to make it more valuable. But realistically, there are better options, even though I still end up building it because I just want to support my team the best I can. I end up building it where I could just build an extra Golem's Gift or Spellbreaker and kind of do my own thing more. I like to play more as true support, and Vanguardian fits that role. It's just not the best value. Vanquisher, I think Vanquisher is a solid A tier, right? The question is, why are we not selecting Vanquisher and selecting Cresselia? Is it S tier? Is Vanquisher S tier? Let's look at the stat distribution on it, shall we? Let's look at the stat distribution. 45 power, 9 pin, and 20% crit. You know what? I think it needs to be an S tier. I think we put it in S tier. The 9 flat pin is quite strong on an item that already gives you crit, and a good passive that a lot of heroes can proc with their abilities effectively at the carry role. I'm thinking Revenant. You know, I'm thinking Murdoch, you know, I'm thinking Sparrow. Vanquisher is just a good value on a lot of those heroes. If you're building a crit build, it's probably going to be mixed in there as an extra flat pin item anyway. So I think S tier. A lot of people build it first item at carry, so probably warrants an S tier. We'll finish off these items on the old pictures first. Void Helm. I like Void Helm. I would say most of the time it slightly outclasses Draconum, except for when you yourself get the takedown, obviously, and then Draconum is better. But Void Helm gives you the extra healing constantly, and it's got weaker competition for the magical armor slot versus the Dracorum, which there's plenty of good physical armor items to build for it. So I think it's a solid A tier. There's a lot of heroes that get good use out of it. You know, I'm thinking Crunch. I'm thinking any sort of solo laner that you're building Omnivamp on. It can be fit in as one of your 2 magical armor items and get great value. You know, it could be fit in as alongside Draconum on someone like Chimera, you know, as your magical armor item. So good value all around. Warden's Faith. should be wherever Stonewall is, right here in A tier. I think Warden's Faith is very strong. The passive on it is very strong. If two, or I mean, very rarely three, but if two heroes on the enemy team are building crit, you should probably have Warden's Faith. It's going to give you better resistance than about anything. If you're comboing it with Stonewall as your two physical armor items, you're going to be very tanky. Like, you're going to be super tanky. So, a strong item, no doubt, in the physical armor category. You know, one of the top ones. Worldbreaker, A tier. Gives you great late game scaling. Gives you back end damage boost. Completely ignoring how your power is calculated and how your damage comes out. It gives you that back end bonus damage versus front end power, while still giving you power based off of your built health. Very strong item. The fact that it procs with Megacosm, right up here, covered up by the tier maker symbol. The fact that Megacosm procs your Worldbreaker just makes that 2-item combo so strong. It's really like incredible, and it gives you the option on full tank builds, like on a Quang build where you build all health items, to throw Worldbreaker in their 5th or 6th item and then get a huge power spike out of it. So contender for S tier. It's upper A tier for sure. Now we're into the newer items that I had to add pictures of in here, so their names are a little shifted down. Some of them are off the image, but it is what it is. Cresselia. Sometimes Cresselia gets recommended to you at support as one of your first items. It is good, but I'm not really a fan of any support item whose main goal is to make me do more damage. Like, why am I building something at the support role to make me do more damage? It's just not worth it. This is an item that gives you 40 magical power, 100% mana regen, and 20 ability haste. Why would I not just build Time Warp? Why? Please explain to me why I would not just build Time Warp. If all that I'm building Cresselia for is to do more damage, why would I not build Time Warp or Caustica and do more damage from the support role? Cresselia just isn't worth it. I'm very tempted to put it in the D tier because I truly can't think of why I would ever build it over Time Warp. I'm putting it in the D tier. You guys who build Cresselia first or second item every time, let me know why you think it's such good value. I mean, I see the numbers that it says, but I mean, why not build Time Warp? Time Warp is better than this. I don't understand. Penumbrum. Is it Penumbrum? How's it pronounced? Penumbrum, I guess is how it actually is. There's no L in there. This is another pretty situational item. If you're getting takedowns, it reduces your cooldowns by a lot, and it has a very good stat spread. But I would say it's a pretty situational item to build. I like to look at it and look at its passive and think, man, if I'm on crunch and I get that takedown and I get all my cooldowns reset, I can hit them all again, and it gives me pin and it gives me health. But at the end of the day, you should probably build something better than it. It is strong on paper. It's strong in a very optimized build, or a build where you're ahead and you're getting the takedowns. Or in 1v1s, it doesn't really benefit you that much in a 1v1, actually. Yeah, D tier. Rarely build. It is situational. Noxia. Noxia is good. Noxia is kind of a better version of applying damage with Tainted Scepter, but without the anti-heal. So we'll put it right here beside Tainted Scepter because you're both putting them in there for extra damage procs on multiple follow-up abilities, but Noxia gives you more damage and no anti-heal. Tainted Scepter gives you still extra damage and also anti-heal. So similar, on par kind of abilities, in my opinion. Dawnstar. This is one, again, I sometimes get recommended to build, and it is good, but kind of situational on what heroes you're going to build it on. We're going to put it in C tier because on the heroes that do get good use out of it, you're happy to have Dawnstar on the build. It's a great stat value, 300 health, 25 physical armor, 10 haste, are all great. And decent passives. Gaining attack speed and reducing enemy damage dealt are both very valuable at the support role, but just not insane. There are better options most of the time. Lunaria. Now this is the support item that you build to get more, or to make it so that when you heal or shield allies, it also heals them based on how much damage you have dealt recently to enemy heroes. So like a must build on Muriel, and maybe Narbash, but not really anybody else. But the stat spread on it is very good, giving you 55 magical power is pretty competitive, especially among the support items. That's one of the upper tier ones. And I think the fact that it gives you that unique ability to not just shield someone, but heal them with Muriel is kind of nice. It's not exceptionally strong. You probably could argue that it should be in C tier, but I like it, so I'm going to put it in B tier. Berserker's Axe. This is a good one for chasing people down. Gives you that movement speed, gives you that extra movement speed when you cross a fog wall. Gives you empowered extra auto damage based off of max health. We're going to put it in A tier because sometimes it gives you that extra potential to finish the gank off, or to get a successful gank off that you may not have gotten off if you couldn't close the gap faster with the fog wall movement speed bonus. In addition to the fact that it gives you a great stat value, 300 health on an item that also gives you 40 power and 15 haste is just overall good. Can't knock Berserker's Axe for the jungler assassin types, Chimera and whatnot. Equinox, one of the more recently added items. Equinox is good. It's good. It gives you a shield, but it's on a 90-second cooldown. It gives you really good attack speed. It gives you crit. I think it's probably an A tier. I think it's probably an A tier with Imperator. I think if you're building Equinox and Imperator in your crit builds, you're probably in a better spot than if you're not building both of those. So A tier is really the move for it. In your 5 crit items, Equinox should be one of them. And if we look into the S tier, that leaves Vanquisher and Demolisher up here as 2 of the other 5. So yeah, I think that's a comfortable spot for Equinox. Echelon Cloak. Now, this item, when I didn't know this item was in the game, I've played against some people where I was literally like, how are they going invisible? What is going on? That Grux keeps coming out of invisibility. I swear there's no item or passive or active starter that gives him invisibility. This is the one that gives it to you. You're not going to see it built often, I hope. Its stat distribution is kind of odd. It gives you power, attack speed, health. It can give you 1% of your missing health and mana back every second while you're camouflaged by it. It's a very niche and unique item. I'm tempted to put it in the rarely build or situational tier, but I think when you do put it on and you do surprise the other team with it, it's probably going to get you a kill or two, and that's valuable enough on its own to not be in D tier. Earthshaker, very strong. I think I just accidentally highlighted that instead of grabbing Earthshaker. Earthshaker, very strong, A tier for me. Certain heroes are just going to get a massive benefit from it. I'm looking at Greystone, obviously. But it was one of the better additions, giving you an attack speed item as well. If you're going to end up building 2 or 3 attack speed items on a bruiser type hero, it's nice to get the extra health from this one. So Earthshaker A tier for me, very strong on certain heroes and just kind of okay on others. Nuclear Rounds is kind of in a similar boat. I think I like it in A tier. I like Nuclear Rounds in A tier because on the heroes where you are building crit and you still want your abilities to hit hard, it's going to make your abilities hit significantly harder. You know, I'm thinking Drongo, I'm thinking Twin Blast, even though Twin Blast is not that good with crit right now. It makes them stronger. I mean, it makes your abilities hit harder, and it's, you know, if you're building a 5 crit item build, I would rather have it as my crit plus attack speed item than Lightning Hawk or Dust Devil on most carries. Now, obviously, some carries where you're relying on your attack speed, I'm thinking, and mobility, you know, like Sparrow, you would rather have Dust Devil and Lightning Hawk than Nuclear Rounds and Equinox, even though you probably might still build Equinox. You know, Nuclear Rounds and Vanquisher, you might want Dust Devil and Lightning Hawk instead. But on most carries, I like Nuclear Rounds a lot. So, gotta go up there. Fist of Razul. Between B and C, obviously, realistically, we're going to put it B tier. On the heroes that you do build it on, it is good to have the extra healing. It's good to have the bigger health pool. It's good to clear your lane faster. But it's not strong. It's really not strong. It could go in C tier. It could potentially go in C tier, but see what it compares to in B tier. Like Salvation, I like Salvation actually more than Fist of Razul. Let's look at C tier. I mean, it's really, in my opinion, it's more on par with Remnant of Renewal. If we can slide that over here without it lagging too hard, it's glitching pretty bad. I think it's more on par with Remnant. They both kind of offer kind of niche healing situations and big health pools, but no armor, so I feel more comfortable with it down here. There's really only like maybe 3 or 4 heroes that you're building Fist of Razul on consistently, and those, it's probably not absolutely necessary. You could probably swap it out with another big health item or an armor item and be fine. So C tier, there are better options for it. Everbloom, I thought when they gave Everbloom its nerf a little bit ago that it was really going to fall off harder, but it is still very beneficial. It is still very strong on the heroes that you are building it on. Narbash effectively makes this mean that your entire team is getting 5% mitigated, which is amazing. And Muriel makes great use of it, of course, too. So B tier it is. It's probably could get close to A tier. You can probably make an argument for A tier still, but B tier looks good. Gaia Greaves. I think I like Gaia Greaves in B tier. You are building it a lot. It was more overpowered before the last patch. You are building a lot for the good stat value, 350 health, 35 physical power, physical armor, 15 haste, and 20 tenacity. With the good passive to boot, I think we're actually going to go ahead and move this into A tier. This is kind of in anticipation for the next patch where they're shifting the verticality around a little bit. Right now, it is increase your jump height by 75%, and that doesn't really come into play very much, but if they've changed the verticality of the map around a little bit to where you can jump up more ledges with that, I think that will be even a little stronger. And it has been a very strong item before, a must-build item before, so for the legacy of it and for the future of it, we'll put it in A tier. Tainted Trident, again a newer item, good for assassins. We're going to put it in B tier. It's good consistently. On the heroes that you want to build anti-heal on that are also like assassin type heroes, or like Fang Mao, you're going to want to build it. It's a good value for the coins. And if you're building a lot of pin on somebody like you are in Fang Mao, then you get a nice scaling additional damage. So it's borderline A tier. It is borderline A tier. If there was just more heroes that could use it more effectively, I would say it's strongly an A tier. But I'm gonna put it in an A tier. I think it is very strong. I think the builds that do build it, like Fang Mao, and certain high flat pin builds, in the jungle or kind of assassin type roles, do benefit pretty heavily from Tainted Trident. So we're gonna put it in an A tier. Windcaller, it shouldn't be any higher than Everbloom. The heroes that make good use of Everbloom make good use of Windcaller, and Lunaria for that matter. But if the heroes that aren't healing and shielding, they can't do anything with it. Heroes like Muriel and Narmash both already have a speed up ability, but Windcaller is just always nice to add on top of it. But I can't quite justify, I don't think, moving it up into A tier. You are going to build it consistently. These all three are some of the stronger support items, but I'm not building it assuming that it alone is going to be a game changer or anything like that. Like I'm building it assuming that once it becomes in combination with multiple on healing or shielding procs, that the sum of that combination will be a game changer. So I think B tier is justifiable for all of these support items. If you're a support main, you probably don't agree, and you probably think that all three of these potentially should be an A tier, or at least Everbloom and Windcaller. But I think I'm happy with them in B tier. I mean, let's look at A tier and see, is there any support items in here? Like Dynamo is obviously a support. Marshall I like better. Yeah, it's tough. I don't personally value any of these three as high as I do Marshall. So they're gonna sit right here in B tier. But if you're a support main, I understand if you think all three of these should be in A tier because you're building them most games. Frosted Lure. This is another one of those that sounds good in theory, but then you're like, did it proc? Did it proc? I can't tell if it procced or not. Frosted Lure is pretty strong. It's on a 45-second cooldown. It gives you a decent stat value. We put it B tier here, I think. Yeah, I think we put it B tier here. If it was on a little bit shorter cooldown, it'd be strong. It'd be really strong, and it'd probably be A tier. But you have to justify building this as one of your physical armor items, unless you're building 3 physical armor items, which you may be on tanks and supports. That's really the only time that you're really looking at something like Frosted Lure, because you're going to want to build, Stonewall, Tainted Guard, Warden's Faith, more than you're going to want to build, and Fire Blossom for that matter, more than you're going to want to build Frosted Lure most of the time. So Miss Meadow Buckler, I think, is an easy A tier. It's honestly probably borderlining S tier. The amount that I build it is insane. The passive on it is very strong. The way that the passive is set up to mitigate more damage off the front end of engagements rather than long-term engagements is really nice. The Omni Vamp is really nice. The only thing is it doesn't give you health. And that's the reason whenever I don't build it, it's because I want more health and I'd rather have Unbroken Will or Void Helm. But when I do build it, because I know I'm doing big damage and I want the Omni Vamp, I'm very happy with it. So Mist Meadow, very strong. You're building it pretty frequently, I hope, in solo lane, and occasionally sometimes on your junglers. So good item overall, very nice value. Plasma Blade. Plasma Blade. Let me make sure I've got a hold of it. I think it's wanting to highlight the D tier here for some reason. There we go. Plasma Blade. Plasma Blade we're going to put in B tier because not many heroes are getting great value out of it. The heroes that do get good value out of it, you're happy that you have it to build. You know, I'm looking at Grim, I'm looking at potentially some people who want to build Auto Attack Crunch. I'm looking at Wraith. You know, I'm looking at maybe Twin Blast potentially. The heroes that are going to benefit from having magical and physical power and crit are few and far between, but the ones that do benefit from that combo, you want Plasma Blade on. I mean, let's be honest. The stacking crit is really nice, and having a double power item just means more power in one item, you know, so it is what it is. You know, if you're a Grim main, then I understand why you would want it in A or S tier, but just not that many heroes that you're building it on. Next up, we've got Envy here. I like Envy a lot because when it does proc, it's very nice. Envy, if you don't know, is on dashing, leaping, or exiting camo, your next basic attack within 3 seconds will critically strike. Now that's okay, but the real benefit is on a 45-second cooldown, when that guaranteed critical strike hits a hero, you silence them for a second. So on heroes like Kalari, on heroes like Chimera, where you're jumping on someone out of camo and you're trying to burn them down, silencing them for 1 second can be a pretty big game changer. Kalari especially is going to make huge use out of this. So we're going to put it in B tier just because not that many heroes make use out of it. And I can't recommend you to build it on every jungler. You know, if you don't have a leap or a dash or a camo exit in the first place, like, you're not going to get anything out of it at all. Like, there's no point in building it. But if you do, you could get good value out of it. Makes me think maybe Wraith. Maybe Wraith could get good value out of it too. I've never really thought about building it on Wraith, but it's there, it's strong, just not on very many heroes. Giant's Ring. Oh, physical armor and percent mitigation when you hit your ult. There are certain heroes that really benefit from this. Tanks really benefit from this. We're going to put it in A tier. I think a lot of the times when you're hitting your ult is during the team fight where you want to have the most mitigation possible, and that's what Giant's Ring is going to give you. So hard to hate on it. 350 health and 45 physical armor is great. Your non-ultimate cooldowns are shortened when you get hit by basic attacks. Just a nice little added on bonus. I like it. I mean, that's a good item overall. Soul Binder. We're going to put it in B tier. It is good consistently. You can probably stack it up effectively on more heroes than I stack it up on, but you know, I'm looking at Gadget and I'm looking at Howitzer as heroes, and even Iggy as heroes where you can get huge stacks on this by the end of the game and, you know, get a potentially 50, 60, 70 bonus power out of Soul Binder's stacks from hitting people at long range. And bonus damage at long range is nice too, especially on someone like Gadget, whose mine is going to go off on people outside of the distance, the proc distance for Soul Binder pretty much every time. So good item. If you're a Gadget main, it's an A or an S tier, but or a Howitzer main. But I think some you know, probably half-ish of the mid lane mages, you're just not going to get a lot of value out of it compared to its competition. Onyxia Quiver. Is that how you pronounce it? How do you pronounce this? Onyxian. I would pronounce it Onyxian Quiver. That's how I'm going to pronounce it right now. Onyxian Quiver, 40% attack speed, 20% crit, and extra lifesteal. This is the one that gives you additional projectiles on this side. I like Onyxian Quiver, but for a carry, if you're hitting every auto, it doesn't benefit you as much as Terminus. and I have Terminus in B tier. So we're going to put a Nyxian Quiver in B tier with Terminus. If you build both of these items together on a melee hero, you get Onyxian Quiver's melee hero exclusive passive, which is for every 10% missing health, you gain 2% attack speed and 1% mitigation. So you can build a Nyxian Quiver and Terminus and just like stacking up attack speed, lifesteal, and mitigation as your health gets lower, and really stall people out when you get to low health. And it's a good combo, but I can't really put them in the A tier, if we're being honest. With some of these other like carry items that you're building, like Equinox is better than it almost every time. Nuclear Rounds is better than it almost every time for your attack speed items. So B tier, I think, is fitting for it. Orb of Growth. I'm very partial to Orb of Growth. We're going to put it in A tier, even though I would argue for it being in S tier. I'm putting it in S tier. You guys are going to have to, get over it or whatever. From a numbers crunching standpoint, which is, what I stand on, the spreadsheets, the numbers do not lie. At late game level 18, this is giving you more combined power, health, and mana than any other single item you can build on a mage. The passive is just okay, 3% recovery of your missing health when you cast abilities, but when you factor in that this gives you the most power and health and mana that you can get from a single item, and the fact that on the way there you're getting bonus XP to outlevel and reach max level before your opponent mid laner, Orb of Growth just has too much value. It is simply a must build if the tempo of the game permits it at all. By your second item, you should have Orb of Growth. Now, if you're going first item, Alchemical Rod from Azura Core, you may not want to go Orb of Growth second item because your tempo stacking both of them up is going to be very slow. But if you think your team's going to make it to the end of the game, late game, then that 2-item combo is going to give you an extreme amount of power, and it will be worth it. So Orb of Growth, I'm a fan of it. I like building it very frequently. Check out my Iggy and Scorch builds where I build it all the time on Iggy for the health mainly. We're gonna drop it in S tier and leave it there. And finally, Spirit of Amir. I can't just go off on a tangent and rant about how good Spirit of Amir is. It is definitely does not deserve to be in a higher tier. Yeah, now I think it should be in the same tier as Oblivion Crown because there are very similar effects. And you have the factor that some mid laners that are starting in jungle, or some mages that are playing in jungle, like maybe Countess or even maybe Aurora, or some other magical damage junglers like that, Quang potentially as well, could benefit heavily from Spirit of Amir early, whereas other mid laners can benefit heavily from Spirit of Amir late. I think that it deserves a good A tier placement. Strong item late and early if you're in the jungle, but we are now down to the 4 tonics, and that is going to be it because we're not ranking these middle of the road. Crest Strength tonic is up first. Now, just a reminder, these tonics last 5 minutes or until you die. So when you buy them, they're 700 gold as of right now. They give you their bonus, and then after 300 seconds, or if you die, you lose it. So it's a consumable, but they do have pretty strong effects. Strength tonic is 30 physical power and 10% omnivamp for that period of time. That's very strong. That's like more than half an item. I think that's like an S tier. Like if you're in the game tier or in-game level where you're considering buying a tonic at all, you know, whether you're the jungler or the carry or potentially even the solo, Strength Tonic is going to be very valuable for you. 10% Omnivamp, I mean, if you're already hitting hard late game, that's going to keep you alive. So 5 minutes of that, sign me up for it. Next we've got Stamina Tonic. This one is like intended for solo laners, I guess, kind of. Or maybe tanks. It's 300 health and 12 health regen for the 5 minutes. I'm not a big fan of this one. I'm gonna put this one B tier. 300 health is really nice if you're on a full health build and you're building all these items like Overlord and Fire Blossom and Elefrost that all proc off of your max built health. But any build outside of that where you're specifically building Overlord, Fire Blossom, there's more than just those couple. I'm trying to think. Bonesaw has a max health scaling one. Maybe if you're building World Breaker as well. But if you're not building those specific items, Stamina Tunic probably isn't for you. You know, the health regen isn't going to be nearly as valuable as the Omnivamp from the Strength Tonic, so it is what it is. Intellect Tonic, this one is pretty good because it gives you 50 magical power and 200% mana regen for the duration. So that's as much mana regen as you're going to need, certainly, especially if you only have one other mana regen item built, that's as much as you're going to need. And it's really your only item to give you even higher upper tier damage for your mid laner at the end of the game. You're probably, even a magical solo laner or a magical jungler probably isn't building it though, because you probably benefit more from the armor or health tonic, but maybe you are, I don't know. If you're super bursty, maybe you are. If you're full tank built Quang, you could probably benefit from it just to have the extra power. But mid laners, it's a must build. It's an always build. If you're at 6 items and you have 700 extra gold as your mid laner, this is the one you're buying. And then finally, to wrap it all up, this extremely long video, we have got Protection Tonic. Now, Protection Tonic, I would say generally I favor over the Stamina Tonic. It gives you 20 of both armors and 30% tenacity, which is significantly better than just giving you 300 extra health. We're going to put it in A tier. Not quite in S tier. Well, I mean, if you're the tank, it's in S tier, right? But if you're like a solo laner who, you know, is built bruiser, you still probably prefer it over Stamina Tonic, but it's a closer competition to Strength Tonic. So, you know, in that situation, you may well take the Strength Tonic over it. So I'm going to leave it in A tier. I think that's where it belongs. 30% tenacity is very strong, but you got to keep in mind that if you're on a build where you already have like 40 or 50% tenacity, then you're not getting full value out of this because tenacity is capped at 60%. So you may be better off to have the 10% Omnivamp, or at least I would think you are a lot of the time, than to have the extra armors. But I still like to buy Protection Tonic quite a bit because tankiness is tankiness. And if you don't already have a bunch of tenacity built, this just supplements all your tenacity with a straight up 30% tenacity for 5 minutes. So that is the full tier list of every item currently in Predecessor. Keep in mind, more items are on the way, of course, and potentially some of these items could even be removed in the future, as these items down here that were in here in the past, Wellspring, Viper, Tectonic Mallet, Requiem. I'm sure if you guys have been around for a while, you remember these. And Phoenix being replaced by Judgment as a starter evolution. So any of these could change in the future. They could shift around in the future. I even expect them to shift around some here coming at the August 20th full release patch. But hope you guys enjoyed the full tier list here. I don't think that I can screenshot this in any way and fit the whole thing on the screen, but if I can, I'll zoom out here, and right here I will place the zoomed out full tier list for you to take a look at and make comments on. So thanks for watching and sticking around for this extremely long 100 subscriber special. And thanks again for growing the channel to this milestone. Next big milestone, of course, would be around 500 subscribers, where YouTube starts giving you partnership benefits and whatnot. But I'm just happy to be where we're at here, guys. I'm happy to make content that you guys are enjoying. Looking forward to the continued growth of Predecessor, and happy from all that we've gotten done so far in the space. Like I said in the recent ranked videos, if you check any of those out, channel improvements are coming. We've got better mics on the way. We've got face cam and live streaming capabilities on the way, but it's probably a couple weeks out here. I wanted them to kind of be ready for this 100 subscriber episode, but I just couldn't quite get it all together. We got to send a mic back. We got internet install delayed and whatnot and so on. So thanks for sticking with it. Glad you guys are enjoying. Any questions or comments you got, drop them down below. I'll hit you with a response as soon as I see them. So thanks for watching, guys. We will see y'all in the next one.